There must have been a reason that Krista was there. Whether it was meant to be or whether it was some sort of intervention, but I definitely know it played a difference in how things ended.
Hey, you have your pager? Radio? I like coming to work and not knowing at all what you're going to be dealing with. And I like being there for people that are needing someone, whether it's holding their hand, comforting, to, being there to make a difference for life and death. I've always been a night person. I've always never enjoyed mornings. Even as a little child, I always, evening was when I kind of came alive. We deal with people in the worst situations that they've ever been in. In Saskatchewan, when I worked back in 1994, we responded to a call in rural Saskatchewan about 40 minutes away south of Regina. It was blizzard conditions, it was high winds and very, very cold. We arrived on scene and I remember walking to the house and seeing this little girl, little 2-year-old on the couch, frozen solid, stiff as a board. I went to pick her up to move her and there was no flexibility at all. She wouldn't move. Her eyes were a little bit open and there was no life to her eyes at all. My first thoughts were that the chances of this little girl surviving were pretty much nil, that she would not recover from this state. I'd never seen anything like that before, but I've seen a lot of dead people, and to me that's what she was.
We couldn't imagine a toddler being outside for that length of time, being able to say to the world that this child would survive something like this.
We did CPR and advanced procedures on her. We arrived at the Plains Health Center and I remember she had a core temperature at that point of 14 degrees, which was the lowest ever recorded. And we heard the next day that she was recovering. Her heart had started beating again and she was being ventilated and they were actually seeing some improvements. And within a week to 2 weeks, they were saying that this little girl was going to make it.
She really was a miracle baby in Saskatchewan, and she made headlines not only across Canada but around the world. It was really something.
I talked to the parents and they were very, very thankful for what Brenda, my partner, and I had done and for resuscitating her. And I remember the dad just making a comment, "Thanks for not giving up." And that really stuck with me, and that was really special to hear. It's getting busy out there. We gotta go. Baby born. Thanks for not giving up. I got this. Thanks for not giving up. We're just gonna stabilize. We're gonna cut the cord and do a few things before we go. Baby's doing excellent.
Okay.
Moving from Regina and into Edmonton, I've really noticed that the same type of people and personalities are attracted to this kind of job. Partnerships at work are so important. That makes or breaks your job in this line of work. I don't get the butterflies, but you do kind of mentally prepare yourself, say, yeah, it's a good chance it's going to be a busy night. Get prepared mentally and ready for anything. I need you to tell me a little bit more about what happened.
It was a Friday night, as we had heard the update from our dispatcher, that it was a very young girl outside for at least maybe an hour or 2 hours and now was not breathing, had no pulse. And I remember saying to Krista, I've never done anything like this. She said, believe it or not, I've done something like this before, exactly like this. And she reminded me of the case in Rollo, Saskatchewan, of Carly.
Dealing with Erica, we arrived on scene. There was 2 EMTs, Jason Vischer and Tammy Hills, already there resuscitating her. So tell me how you felt on that call.
There was me and my partner Jason.
he said, "Have you ever done anything like this before?" And I said, "No, not like this." And I think it's the first time in a long time my heart actually raced. I could hear the mom screaming. She was yelling at me saying, "She's outside, she was outside."
Krista picked up the baby and brought her over into the kitchen and put the baby down where I cleaned off the kitchen table, and there was a sound, just a very solid sound of something very hard being put on the table.
No life signs. She's clinically pronounced dead on the scene. She has no heart rate. Her saliva had crystallized in her mouth and that her jaw was frozen solid. She reminded me a lot of Carly, except for being smaller, a lot younger, but very similar. We continued with CPR. The four of us worked very aggressively. I was attempting to do what we call an intraosseous infusion, which is a needle into the bone of her leg, and her leg being as frozen as it was a very, very difficult procedure. And I just remember her holding her leg so long that it was actually causing a lot of pain on my hand. She was so frozen.
And I remember at one point, Jason and myself looking at each other like, I can't believe we're doing this. This is something, it just boggles the mind, how this situation happened. But then Krista picked up on it and said, "I've been through this before, and it can have a good outcome." So she really steadied us, and she really gave us some focus. I remember driving back to the station. We didn't say too much. We were quite down because at that point, she had still not regained an effective pulse.
When I had some time to think on the way to the hospital, I did say a prayer for her, just very briefly. Like, if she's not going to make it, I know she's going to be in a better place.
One of our supervisors said to us, "Guys, can you believe it? She's after you guys went home and went to bed, she regained her pulse and she's breathing on her own." And
it wasn't until I saw her the next day sitting up in her crib in the hospital that it hit me really hard. She was literally sitting up and responding, to her mom and looking around the room, and it was just extremely exciting for me to see that, and it's a real relief to see how well she was doing.
I don't even think Mom said anything before she just came up and hugged each one of us. And you work with these people and you see them at their best, but then you see your coworkers hugging Mom and with tears in their eyes, and Mom has tears in her eyes, and it was an incredibly emotional moment. It was really quite amazing.
To be at both calls, to me, is just incredible. I don't know what you can call it. A lot of people call it coincidence, and I've had a lot of people say to me it was meant to be. I believe that God is involved in everything in my life, everything I do. So in that way, I'd be lying to say that I don't think that there's a reason that he had me on both. It's just, for me, it's a hard thing to think of why would it be me. So that's what I struggle with.